Colleague Gwent. My name is Laurian Veaudor and I'm the chef owner of Cocorico Patisserie. Been running this shop in Cardiff for about 10 years and this year I won the Bake Off Professional 2020. And today I'm going to present you my recipe of the raspberry and white chocolate ganache choux bun. It's going to be a choux bun with a red craquelin, and inside we're going to put raspberry jam and some white chocolate and vanilla whipped ganache. So to start, we're going to make the raspberry jelly or raspberry jam, and for this I'm going to need some caster sugar, some pectin NH nappage and fruit puree. So this one it can be any purees that you want, and for the sugar contents I don't want too much either, so you keep that kind of sharpness from the fruit. And very important, we're going to mix the pectin NH with the sugar and make sure that is nicely dispersed into it. You want to make sure that it doesn't leave lump when we put into the puree. That is all mixed up, and now we're going to put the puree onto the hob and heat it up around 45 degrees Celsius. So here we got the puree onto the hob and just kind of want to warm it up a little bit. And basically we got the sugar and the pectin all mixed together, and we pour all that in and make sure to whisk it in so we don't get any lumps of pectin into the puree. And all you want to do is to now bring it to the boil and leave it boil for about 2 to 3 minutes to make sure that the pectin react and we get a good setting on a pectin. So here we go, boiling away. I'm gonna stop it, and I'm just gonna pour it into a jug. Today cool down just a little bit. Bear in mind the pectin will usually set around 60 degrees Celsius, so you don't want to wait too long. And we're just going to pour in a silicone mold. You can also do it in a bowl, let it set in the fridge and use it in a piping bag later on. If you want to substitute some of the puree for whole fruits, you could also have maybe a 2/3 of the recipe of puree and 1/3 of fruit, so it'll give you a bit more texture to your jelly. And I would say all those preparations, if you can actually do them the day before, is even better. So when you come to do your choux pastry, then you're actually ready. And I'm going to put this now into the freezer to set. So it's going to be rock hard when we want to push it into the cream. So next we're going to make the craquelin, and the craquelin is what you put on the top of your choux pastry. It's a bit like I say usually it's a little blanket for your choux pastry to actually proof properly. And I will show you later on after cooking the difference from one choux who got craquelin on top and one who doesn't, and how well they develop with it. It's also a good way to incorporate colors to it, make it a little bit more vibrant, bring a little bit more flavor, as well as the texture. So I think it's something that I really like to do on choux pastry. And here we've got demerara brown sugar and some salt. I use the demerara sugar to give more of a crumble texture, and we've got some butter room temperature, which is quite important because you want to make sure that it blends in properly. And we've got some plain flour to go in it. And for this one, because we're doing a raspberry, I'll be using a powder colorant, and as you can see I'm going to put just a little bit into it. We'll check after if we need a little bit more. With colorant, I always use powder colorant, and you got two types: is hydrosoluble or liposoluble. One is designed to be mixed with fat, the liposoluble, and the hydrosoluble is for water-based things. Bear in mind here we do have a lot of of fat content, but you still got that little bit of water content from the butter because it's 82% fat and 18% of water. So it's still going to dissolve into it. So you could use either of those, but those recipe, they need powder colorant because otherwise you will be adding some more water content to your recipe, and it's not something that you desire for that kind of product. Also do this by hand. Basically you just want to get all the ingredients together. You can't really overwork it, but it's that moment that you just want a nice thick paste. Sometimes if the butter is not melted properly, you can also, with a bit of blowtorch, gently go around and you will get all the butter taken off the side. So here we go, and you want that kind of texture of modeling clay kind of thing. You can just work it quite easily. So now the craquelin mix is all kind of mixed up. We're gonna take our mix and put it in between two bits of paper. You don't want to put too much because we're going to roll it at about 2 to 3 millimeter top, and if you were using a rolling pin straight on it, you would actually kind of get it stuck on it. So we're just gonna press it gently so you get a nice and even layers. Going to take the excess off and we can use it later on. The good thing with this recipe, we do batch of it in the shop and we pre-cut it and then we freeze it. We keep it in the freezer as disc ready to use. So every time we got some choux pastry, we just go in the freezer, take the disc and plonk it on it, and you want to like that. You don't have to do this every single time. So now we're going to make the whipped white chocolate ganache, and this is definitely better to do the day before. We usually ask a minimum of 4 hours to set in a fridge, but the ideal is 12 to 18 hours in the fridge to make sure that all the chocolate recrystallize properly. And for this we got the first part of the cream, then we're going to bring to the boil. We got a chocolate here, and we also I've got some vanilla pod. So this is a very expensive ingredient. I get mine, those ones came straight from the farm in Papua New Guinea, and I'm very fortunate. As you can see, it's nice and soft and it's plump, but then most of the time you will find some vanilla essence or things like this. I use this, but you could use different spices. You could also use some cinnamon or some ginger. It's just to give a bit more flavor to the ganache, and it's something that I wanted to use today for you. And for this, I'm gonna put the knife through it, keep it flat, run it all the way through, and as you can see, we got all the seeds inside it, and then run back the blade on it. So I'm gonna still put the pod inside the cream because you still got quite a lot of flavor into it, and then all the seeds into the cream. And we're just gonna bring the cream onto the boil. Cream is now boiling, and all we're gonna do is I'm gonna pour it onto my white chocolate. You wanna pour all of it in. and especially all the little seeds you see down the bottom, you want to scrape that. As we said, it's very expensive and you're going to get a lot of flavor from it. And you want to create an emulsion. So an emulsion is to make sure that is when the fat, dry and water all come together in a lovely harmony, because you don't want, otherwise if the emulsion is not right, everything's going to split and you will not have the molecule of fat, water and solids in the right place. So it's like a mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is an emulsion, but ganache is as well. And as you can see, I've got a good texture into it. And now I'm gonna add the remaining bit of the cream. This one we don't want to boil it because basically when you take the cream above 60 degrees, you're going to destructure the molecule of your cream and the fat and the water content is going to separate and it's not going to be as good for when you whip it. So this is why we need to use some cream that is still chilled, and we're going to add the rest into it. Is more to incorporate than to whisk, and as you can see, and for good measure, for this I'm gonna have a look to cling film to contact, and the reason is we're using cling film straight to contact is so we don't get a skin forming on the top. So you could do this with quite a lot of the crème, the anglaise, the custards, all those kind of cream that are hot and suddenly gonna go cold. You might gonna end up having a skin forming on top, and basically you want to create that skin already with a cling film. And this is gonna go into the fridge for a minimum of 4 hours. So now we're gonna do the main part of it, is a choux pastry, and is always known as a bit of a tricky one to do. For this we're gonna put we got some milk and water, then we're gonna put into the pan. We also got some unsalted butter. I always use unsalted butter because I want to make sure that I can regulate how salty all the bakes are. And if you use salted butter, then it's already going to be tricky to regulate this. Here we got some salt and some sugar. It's a low quantity, but then the salt is going to be to make sure that we get some flavor into the choux pastry, and the sugar is going to be to give the right color and right caramelization to the choux pastry as it baked. Bring it to the boil. And we're going to wait until the butter is all melted. And you don't want to boil it too much. You just want to make sure that the temperature rises up quite slowly, because otherwise you're going to end up having the liquid, the water and the milk is going to start boiling. Your butter is not going to be melted. And bear in mind here, you only got 250 grams of liquid. If you boil this for a minute, you're going to get maybe a 10% loss of your water contents, and this is going to imbalance all your recipe. Is all those things that you need to take in consideration, because especially on small quantities and on small recipes, you can unbalance things quite quickly, and this is one of the crucial bit. The choux pastry revolved in between different things, because we're gonna have to cook this with the flour, and if you leave the flour cooking a little bit more, you're going to dehydrate your first dough a lot more, and after that we're going to need to add some liquids, and everything is different. Some flour might absorb more water than others. Even though they're all plain flour, they all got different type of absorption of water. And after that we're going to use some eggs, and for this the eggs they're all different sizes as well. So we got 5, but sometimes we're only going to need 4.5, and some other times we're going to need 5.5. And this is really important, and this is why I wanted to show you choux pastry, because it's a very tricky stages for the texture. So I was inspired to do this recipe today because we do this at Cocorico Patisserie, and we use them for the afternoon tea. So we do like mini choux, and they cut up. We get a cream and a gel inside, and I think it's great for skill wise to know how to make a decent choux pastry. Is definitely a good basic to have. So now we've got a liquid coming to simmer, and we're gonna chuck all the flour all in one go. And you wanna make sure that it all come together into a paste. So I don't leave it too long onto the hob. Is mainly to get everything together into a paste, and at this stage you just put it all into the mixer, or otherwise you can do it by hand. Get the biceps going a little bit. So here we're going to leave it on the first gear. You want it to go quite slow, and I've got my eggs here. And a little trick is to actually kind of mix them so we burst all the egg yolk, and we don't have just one yolk or one white going in, because we got a small quantity of dough again, and you want to make sure then you get the right balance of egg whites and egg yolk into it, and you want to feed it just a little bit at a time. So you want to make sure to just put a little bit at a time and make sure that you get incorporated into the mix properly. I will show you the texture we are after, and you can easily go too far, and you better to have less than too much. Gone too far, then that's it, you've gone too far. It's no going back. Here I can see then we're not far off, and as you can see we still got almost an egg. And this is when you really have to make sure to put just a little bit at a time. You want a certain texture to it, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And I think we're there. I'm just going to finish my end. And when I pull it, you want to get that V shape, and it's dropping a little bit but not too much. But as you can see, we get a nice V shape of the pastry, and that is a good sign for your choux pastry. I'm gonna give you a little trick and a little tip on how we use piping bag and how I've been taught. So usually always use a nozzle, so you're gonna get a better end product. This one is a number 10 straight nozzle, and first tip is just push into the nozzle. So when you're going to put your preparation into it, it's not going to come out and drop out of it. And after that, on the top, you want to give a good fold back. And I'm right-handed, but I'm going to use my left hand, and I'm going to do a C with it just to kind of fold it onto it. And as you feed your piping bag, you put into it and you scrape onto your finger to make sure that it stays all in a piping bag and it doesn't run everywhere. Obviously experience help as well onto doing this. Never overfeed your bag, because otherwise it's going to burst everywhere. And when the preparation is into it, fold it back, and you can see the top is all clear. And this is when you want to squeeze it down onto it. You can give a couple of turns just to secure it. And now, because I'm right-handed, I'm gonna stick the piping bag into my right hand, between my thumb and my index. This is going to be the hand that squeeze, and my left hand is going to be the one that guide the nozzle. And what you are after is you want to make sure your piping bag is straight up. You don't move, you squeeze until you get a perfect shape. Stop squeezing and put it away. And now we have the craquelin here, and all we're going to do is we're going to place it on top of the choux pastry, and literally just want to put it gently. You don't need to press it even more. With the heat, the craquelin is gonna go back into it. Now it's ready. We're gonna pop it in the oven. It's gonna take 50 minutes to an hour, 140 degrees Celsius. And now the choux buns been in the oven for about 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and they are nice and dry. So you can see the bottom needs to be nice and brown. Now this is the whipped ganache who's been rested overnight, and we're literally just gonna pour that into the bowl, and we're just gonna whip it like you would whip a cream. As you can see, you get an amazing texture from a whipped ganache, and when I mix into the mixer, I always leave it a medium speed, up to 6, not too high. You want to make sure that it takes the right amount of time to get all the pockets of air and all the proper aeration into the cream. And as you can see now, I've got something which is really silky smooth, and it just makes you want to eat it. And now to finish it up, we just gonna open them up. And today I've got a straight nozzle, but then you could also use a star nozzle for it. And I'm just gonna pipe it around. I'm going to take our insert of raspberry to push it in. Just like this. And maybe carry on piping. Just pop on top like this.
Wow.
And here's my white chocolate whipped ganache and raspberry choux bun.